I wanted to spend this morning putting our practice in the sort of larger context of Buddhism and look at the issue of whether Buddhism is a religion. And it depends, of course, on how you define religion. The dictionary defines it as the belief in and reverence for a supernatural power or powers regarded as creating and governing the universe. So, with that said, to me, the short answer has always been, in a technical sense, Buddhism is not a religion. Now, that's not to say that many in the world don't view it as such or treat it as such, or sort of treat the image of the Buddha as a deity. But certainly that's less true in the West, less true in the United States. And and as some of you know, I view it more as a philosophy of living, a value system, but it's compatible with any other belief system. So there are plenty of people that practice other theistic traditions. So you could be a Buddhist Christian, a Buddhist Jew, a Buddhist Muslim, a Buddhist Hindu. Uh, uh, and it really doesn't have to be incompatible. And some of the uh, well-known writers and thinkers in this field belong to other faith traditions, but have brought Buddhism into their theistic or worshiping tradition. And and for many of us, and I include myself in this, um, the term religion sort of brings up all kinds of negative experiences or responses from the religion that we grew up in or were raised in. And when the assumption is that being religious entails an unquestioning faith in dogmas, customs, traditions. That's kind of a turnoff for some of us. Certainly has been for me. And one of the things that I really loved in my early introduction to the Buddhist teachings was that he said to his followers, don't take my word for it. Check it out, try it out, and see if it works. And if it works, great. If not, okay, we don't have a creed. You don't have to, swear that, you're going to abide by this or not. Um, and he said, accept nothing just because I said so. Don't just take it for my word. In the famous teaching in the Kalama Sutta, he advised his monks that believing in traditions or dogmas for their own sake just doesn't work. It's a non-starter. And keep in mind, he was walking around northern India when Hinduism was really the predominant religion. And he was saying, don't necessarily go there because it involves so many beliefs and dogmas that you can just get trapped in that. He said the value of a teaching can be authentically confirmed only when we put it into practice. So he's very pragmatic. That's why I title my book and title my teachings as Practical Dharma, because, it either works for you or it doesn't. We see how these teachings play out in our lives. And then we can also look to others that have practiced this path over the centuries, and who we consider wise and honorable and practitioners, and sort of see what their experience was. We can sort of use them as role models for our own path. And so through this process, there's a genuine realization of how these teachings develop and how they can inform our lives. We can call it what we want. We can call it religion, call it spirituality, call it philosophy. It doesn't really matter. I mean, to me, the labels are not what matters. It's as the Buddha taught, it's our actions and the fruits of our actions that count. Does it reduce our suffering? Does it bring more joy into our lives? Does it help us relate better to others, and so forth and so on? It's a contemplative practice. It's an inquiry that doesn't depend on a belief in a deity or a soul or anything supernatural. Okay, so in that sense, I don't consider it a religion. Sam Harris, who's a philosopher and a teacher and has a pretty popular podcast writer, he greatly admires Buddhism, although he doesn't call himself a Buddhist. He calls it, quote, the richest source of contemplative wisdom that any civilization has produced. So his view is that it's the richest source of contemplative wisdom that any civilization has produced. But then he goes on to say, and I think this is interesting, that he thinks it would be better if Buddhism was pried away if from the name, the label. He says, the wisdom of the Buddha is currently trapped within the religion of Buddhism. Worse still, the continued identification of Buddhist with Buddhism leads tacit support to religious differences in the world. I mean, he's big on talking about how religious differences over the centuries have caused so much human conflict, impedes genuine inquiry, gets people to just take stuff because it's dogmatically taught, and that if we get caught up in the labels, that we can, that can really distract us. So he says one of the functions of Buddhist practice is to sweep away all those artificial cabinets and files in our head, labels which limit us, so that we don't see the world as it is. I mean, often traditional religious teachings sort of presents a view of the world that may not comport with reality when we really dig down into it. So when we're arguing about whether Buddhism is a philosophy or a religion, is it really an argument about our biases concerning philosophy and religion in general? You know, one of the things that appeal to me at Buddhism is it's not dogmatic. It doesn't, there's no creed, there's no, swear on the Bible or any of that. It's just um, a set of beliefs, a set of values, a set of practices that the Buddha said, try them out. If they work, great. If they don't, go on your way. But through the practice, through the implementation of the teachings that we talk about here every week, um, we begin to see and experience the transformative power of these teachings. And it is not predicated upon belief in some deity. It's predicated on the very practical application of what he taught. Um, as long as if we just look at it as an intellectual exercise, if we just study Buddhism in the realm of concepts and ideas, um, that's an interesting intellectual exercise, but it's not going to reduce our suffering if we don't apply the teachings in our day-to-day lives. So I wanted to just sort of end with a little story, a little fable from Zen Buddhism. And it goes like this. So there's a professor visiting a Japanese Zen master to ask him about Buddhism, to inquire about it, to learn about it. And the Zen master, some of you may know the story. The Zen master serves the professor tea. They're having tea. And so the master's pouring the professor's cup, and he keeps pouring, and the cup's spilling over, and it's spilling all over the table. And the professor says, the cup is full, no more will go in. And the master says, like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you the path unless you first empty your cup? In other words, we have to set aside all the preconceived ideas and notions and beliefs and misapprehensions when we come to this practice. It's why in Zen they talk about the beginner's mind. It's like fresh eyes we talked about last month. It's the idea that we come with an open mind. We set aside preconceived ideas, because if we don't, it's going to keep getting in the way of our progress on the path, because the preconceived ideas direct us to look at the world as we wish it to be, not as it is. So perhaps if we really want to understand and implement these practices, we first have to empty our own cup. So let me leave it there and let's have some discussion and get your thoughts.